Hi everybody, my name is Annie Leblanc. I'm Vice President Sales and Marketing and Associate at DLL. Welcome to this very first podcast. I'm thrilled and excited to start this journey with you guys. I hope that you will enjoy yourself as much as you will learn throughout this process. I would like to introduce you to our very first guest. I got to know him as my former customer while he was CMO at Genesee in Wyoming, Canada. Moreover, years later, I got the chance to work with him as he was my technical director at DLL. During this year, I got the chance to learn a lot about the locomotives, and I thought I'd share that with you guys. He's almost my year's age of experience in the railroad industry. Mr. Daniel Bellemare. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine, and you?
I'm very excited and honored to be here with you and to work in your first podcast.
Thank you for participating. I'm sorry. I'm a bit nervous. And
both of us, I guess.
and I know that we've been working a lot on this podcast. I know you're spending a lot of time, and I do really appreciate that you're taking the time to go out of your comfort zone and do this with me.
You're most welcome. As you said, it is a very challenging process for me also.
Excellent. So, I know you very well because of all this we've been doing together for these years. I thought you'd be the best person to introduce yourself to the audience so they have a better sense of what is your background in the railroad industry.
Okay, well, as you can see by the color of my hair and my beard, I've been in the railroad business for a very long time. In fact, it started almost, pretty much almost 42 years ago, because in February 1980, I started with Canadian National Railway as an apprentice mechanical, and after I finished my apprenticeship, I also assumed some different roles from first line supervisor all the way up to shift leader, which is the same thing as being a shop manager in 3 different provinces in Canada, working for CN. After that, I worked for Alstom and Genesee, Wyoming, Canada. I worked as a CMO, Chief Mechanical Officer, for Genesee, Wyoming for about 15 years. After that, I joined, like you mentioned before, I joined DLL, worked with you guys there for a few years, and now I'm Executive Account Manager for AQRail. And as such, I was able to fulfill for a 8-month period Mechanical Director for Chicoutimi Railroad Transportation up in northern Quebec.
Wow, that is quite an impressive list of resume.
Yeah, you can say that.
Okay, well, the purpose of this podcast with you guys and with you, Danielle, was basically to start to discuss a little bit about the evolution of the locomotives. We all know that the steam locomotives are the ancestors of the actual locomotives that we see today, right? So, let's start with the electric locomotives. Can you tell me a little bit more about the electric locomotives?
Yes, indeed. As you mentioned earlier, from the early 1900s, steam locomotives were gradually superseded by electric or diesel electric locomotives until the late 1950s, early 60s, when the North American railways fully converted to electric and diesel electric power. What promoted that was in 1879 in Germany, Werner von Siemens, who was an inventor, demonstrated and established the concept of the insulated third rail to supply electric power, to electric locomotive with the first experimental electric passenger train.
Well, this Mr. Siemens, is he the founder of the multinational that we know here, Siemens, really renowned in the railroad industry?
You're exactly right, Annie. And up until this day, Siemens AG, which is the name of the company today, is still manufacturing electric and diesel electric locomotive, as well as passenger rail cars for railroad and transit authority all around the world. And Amtrak and Via Rail are both going to be receiving a Tier 4 charger locomotive.
Produced by Siemens, right?
Exactly, produced by Siemens.
Excellent. But why? Why electric?
Well, the greater need for less polluting locomotive and trains for the underground subways and tunnel drove the adoption of electric locomotive in the first place. So now, with the new world, well, the whole world is trying to reduce their emissions of greenhouse gases. We are seeing much more interest towards electric tramways, shuttles, as well as municipal entities slowly moving towards electric and other cleaner technologies for freight and passenger trains.
And now, where are the electric locomotive up to?
Well, today, electric locomotives continue to play a great role in the scenery, especially on high-speed train, passenger service in countries like France, Japan, Spain, and China, as well as at the light rail service like commuter trains and airport shuttles. A little bit closer to home, with the new construction of the REM, Réseau Express Métropolitain, we are seeing electric locomotive and trains being implemented. However, the high cost of electrifying new lines, either by third rail or overhead catenary, continues to be an obstacle to wider deployment of this new, cleaner technology.
Very interesting, Daniel. And now, let's talk a little bit about the diesel electric locomotive. So what about them?
Well, from the Dr. Rudolf Diesel original patent on his compression ignition engine, which was later called diesel engine, in 1892, it has advanced the diesel locomotive made the steam locomotion virtually obsolete by the end of the Second World War.
But why?
Well, the relative it's a pretty hard word to say. The relative standardization of the diesel engine when compared to the steam provided better economy of scale in mass manufacturing, while the diesel locomotive offered many clear operational advantages. Naming a few will be a multiple locomotive operation, cheaper maintenance and idling time, better thermal efficiency, less labor-intensive operation.
Okay, wow, this is really something interesting, Danielle. So let's go back more in details on that subject. So then, since World War II and the introduction of the diesel electric locomotive, what are, according to you, the most interesting features or technology being introduced?
Well, I really think that the improvement of the performance of the locomotive diesel engine since its humble beginning is, to me, the most important step in the evolution of the diesel electric locomotive development. Almost a century ago, in October 1925, the American Locomotive Company sold their first commercially produced diesel locomotive in the United States.
Can you tell me just a little bit more about this locomotive?
Yes, what we know is that this first locomotive was sold to the Central Railroad of New Jersey, and it was a 300 horsepower, 60-ton diesel electric switcher. And since then, many improvements to the diesel electric locomotive came with the construction of a huge electric plant in LaGrange, Illinois, built in 1935 by General Motor Corporation, which later, as you know, became the Electromotive Division, or E&D, of General Motors. They came up with different versions of switching and passenger locomotive. Also, the invention of multiple unit control revolutionized the railway industry.
But in what ways did it revolutionize? Whoa, also another very twisting word. So in what way it did revolutionize the industry, Daniel?
Well, Annie, a number of diesel electric locomotive could be coupled together with the controls of each unit plugged into a single locomotive cab that a single engineer and fireman could control up to 10 locomotives on the head of a train.
And what about the steam locomotives?
When the railroad double or triple-headed steam locomotive, each locomotive required its own engineer and fireman. Thus, the diesel electric locomotive represented a labor-saving and a cost-cutting machine.
Did it have an impact on the infrastructures also?
Well, it surely did. The diesel electric locomotive did not need the large quantities of water that steam locomotive required. So, it did not require the maintenance of expensive water tanks, pipelines, and water cranes all along its line, which meant another cost saving.
Very, very interesting. So was EMD the only diesel electric locomotive builder in North America at that time?
No, Annie. In 1941, Alco and General Electric introduced a new type of locomotive with a 1,000 horsepower diesel engine, offset cab, with exposed running boards, which they called an RS type for road switcher. It was capable of carrying out multiple duties.
Okay, and was there any other initiative that you know of?
Yes, after the Second World War, some engineering companies developed a novel alternative technology that proved to be much less efficient than a diesel-electric locomotive.
Oh, why? Okay. Oops.
Well, in 1960, the year of my birth, General Electric produced a U-25B locomotive, which was later called a U-boat, after they terminated their association with the American Locomotive Company.
Okay, well, from what I can see, EMD and G seems to be like the two major players in the railroad industry in North America at that time.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Annie. From 1968 to 1980, the average annual production of EMD locomotives was around the 1,000 mark versus about 300 for GE. GE finally overtook EMD for the number one spot in 1987 and hasn't looked back since.
Well, this is very interesting, Danielle. Thank you guys for watching this first podcast. Thank you very much, Danielle, for the time you spent
most welcome.
on all this art search. It was extremely interesting. I'm very fond of locomotive, and it allowed me to learn a lot of things this morning.
I'm happy you did.
Okay. Well, I hope you guys also learned something today during this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like the video. Our next podcast will be talking about the AC traction locomotive. I hope you guys will be with us watching that second podcast. So this is Annie Leblanc from DLL. For more details on DLL, you can go on our website at www.dllinc.com. Take care, guys. Cheers.
So long, folks.